There we are. We are live. Hey,
Yes,
everybody.
yes.
Hey,
Hello, hello, hello.
welcome back to the throne room for Barbershop Conversations. We are excited to be able to come back to you guys today and be in conversation
Mhm.
about today's conversation is really going to be about broken, toxic, and heal relationships. And so we're
Yes,
excited. So press that like and share button. Make sure that you get this out to your friends and family. It is for everybody and anybody to join this conversation. And we're going to give everyone a moment to kind of get into the throne room.
absolutely.
I'm looking. Now, did it pop up for you on your end?
It did not yet.
Yeah, as I said, I didn't see anything either. It says check that is checked off on that we're good. So I need to see if it's, are we live? Can someone enter in the chat if you are live, if you can let us know that you see
Do you
us,
see
that would.
us?
I gotta, ask the people. That's how we're doing it.
That's it. That's
But
it.
also please know that we want to hear from you. So if you have questions during today's segment, please feel free to ask your questions. We want to hear from you. We want you to reach out. As well, don't forget to head on over to royaltynetwork.net and go on in and just see if whatever's in there. If there's something for you, just go in there. But
That's
we're
it.
we're
Check it
excited.
out.
Yes. Okay, it came up for me on my side. I'm happy. It's done. It's good. All
So,
right, guys.
I don't have it yet. Wait a minute.
Don't
What's
have it.
wrong?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I ain't
Well,
gonna rush you.
let's get going. I don't want to slow up anything.
Okay. As long as you got it, did you share it on your page yet?
I haven't. It hasn't popped up on mine yet. I don't know why.
I'm not. I had to go
Nope.
into the
Never
regular.
mind. I got it. There
You
it
got
is.
it? Okay,
I am
good.
there.
So, as I said, guys, today we're going to be talking about broken, toxic, and healed relationships. This is not just about man and woman relationships, but relationships in general.
In
And
general.
we're going to be coming in and really taking the cover off. I feel today that the cover needs to be broken on a lot of things. And so we're going to be curious.
Let's just get rid of it.
We're going to be vulnerable. We empathize with everybody in the situations and the pains that they went through, but we respect the process of what it took for you to get to your healing and to your stage of the journey. And
Absolutely.
so, as we begin the conversation, I'm just gonna start off right off the top. Ned, in our last conversation, we started talking about relationships, and we talked about, these toxic people and really breaking traits
Right.
and really going into in-depth detail about identifying some of those toxic traits that are wrapped up in people and how we can be able to kind of break ourselves free. So I want to say that society has really conditioned men that this brokenness thing is kind of good. And they kind of put it whereby I think that the identity of a man is wrapped up in either sex, money, and dominance. And with that being said, I also think that the conditioning of this brokenness is being a good thing is also centered around the fact that we don't acknowledge that there are a lot of men who have been abused themselves and we don't take it seriously. And that there is that it's almost feminine for men to complain that they have been either sexually abused or that something has happened to them whereby they have been hurt. And so a lot of this stuff has been thrown out there to our men with regards to how they're supposed to exist within society. Can you talk about what this brokenness looks like and the differences between the brokenness and the toxic, and your thoughts about the way in which society portrays things?
So here, first off, let me say this, because I think when we talked last and we talked about toxic relationships, I did this generic run. Yeah. And I was just like, get away, get away, get away. But the reality of it is that there's sometimes no way to really just drop stop, drop, and roll and get away from stuff when you're in it and you're connected to it and you're embedded in it sometimes. And so it's absolutely important that we talk about the process. How do you get through the toxic relationships? How do you deal with the brokenness? And also, how do we categorize it? Like, for men, as you stated, brokenness is something that we struggle with as men because it tends to show a sign of weakness, or like, hey, if that affected you, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Or if that happened to you, what did you do to make that happen? And I mean, I think sometimes women hear that often because they're hearing like, hey, know that whatever happened to you was not your fault. Whatever happened to you was not your fault. Men don't get that same message. You know what I mean? Because we've been taught from a young age to just be strong. And, you know what I mean? If something's wrong with you, then it's because there's a weakness in you. And so to be able to break through that mindset or have a renewed mindset in that is crucial for us to understand, wow, what happened to me wasn't my fault. Whether it was sexual abuse or mental abuse or physical abuse, wasn't on you. It's something that happened to you, but it's not your fault. But more importantly, understanding and acknowledging it so that now you can get out of it. As harsh as it may sound, sometimes we always live with the factors of the now what. So we acknowledge what happened. We are cognizant of what went on in our lives or what took place in our lives, but then we have to figure out now what's the now what. How do I get out of this? How do I build from this? How do I grow out of that? And that's the piece that I think most of my brothers are struggling with. It's the now what. Like, how do I deal with this now? How do I handle this? And so hopefully tonight we can kind of put some pin cushions in some areas that can help some brothers and sisters figure out the now what.
Yeah. I don't know. Something just came over me with that now what piece, right? Don't say
I said to you, let's go there today. So the cover's off.
What piece really brought me to thinking about how men struggle with suicide, and we really don't address that appropriately. And so I want you to, if you can, just, and you don't got to go into big detail because we know that. I just want to put this out there, disclaimer, we are not licensed therapists. No. We are here to provide a place and a space for you to be able to bring it to the table and for us to be in conversation about so that you can essentially find the help that you need. But I do want to be able to put that out there. Can we talk a little bit about that, men and suicide and the what next?
The what next, right? And so, and it's scary, but the reality of it is that, men typically are more suicidal than women. They are more inclined to end life or feel that there's this sense of hopelessness because of the fact that there's so many unspoken pressures that fall on our shoulders. And so the importance of knowing the now what helps, in all honesty, to be perfectly honest with you, with a lot of us. I know for myself, I'll say that, right? Knowing that there's a now what gives me some hope.
Right.
Knowing that there's a now what gives me something to hook into. When you feel like there's nothing else, it's like, why would I do this? What's the purpose? Why am I here? But to know that just because you hit a brick wall, or just because you ran into a travesty, or just because you put yourself in a position where, life seems bleak at that season or in that season, there's still a now what. There's still an opportunity to bounce back. There's still an opportunity to connect to sources, resources, people, things that can help you kind of climb out of that dark place that you might be in. And, it's tough because, again, for men, it's difficult sometimes to ask for help. But when you identify and you take the moment to think about you and your now what, it helps you be able to reach those resources or accept those resources because they're out there. There are tons of hotlines and, support groups and, whether it's through your church or your mosque or wherever you may go to seek a higher call. Yeah. There's always some support system in place. But as men, we have to be willing and understanding that if we think about our now what, it gets you through. My personal now what was my boys. My sons were my now what. when things got really scary for me in my life and I was dealing with the depression of life, it became important for me to focus on them. You know what I mean? Those two gentlemen in my life helped me understand, like, yeah, I gotta put a plan for tomorrow. I gotta do this for tomorrow, because it wasn't about me anymore. It had to be about something bigger than me, because if I was just focusing on Ned, I was in a dark place. I was in an ugly place. So if I think about my own struggles without the now what,
yeah,
I'm another statistic. But accepting the now what helped me understand, listen, you know what, whether it's my children or it's just your love for Christ or your love for whoever, you have to find your passion to say, this is what I'm doing this for. And then once you get that, it allows you now to put the other tangibles in place. Because as you're moving through the now what, it's like, okay, cool. I got to do this to add to that. And I got to bring this piece in because that helps me push forward to that. And I got to do some, and it brings you out of a dark place. So the now what is huge for a lot of us.
Yeah, that's good. I really like the fact that we talk about the now what.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to go back into the things in which we think about as far as relationships are concerned, right? And we think about that brokenness piece, and we think about the toxic piece. You gave us some broad overview, but what should be kind of the leading factors when we are going into relationships, both intimate, regular, corporate, whatever you want to say, social? What are some of the leading factors that we should be thinking about when we're going into a relationship or we're looking to be in relationship?
Right. Relationships are scary. So understanding that part, I think is crucial for a lot of us. I always believe in this theory of cautious optimism. I'm very optimistic, but I'm also very cautious. So what that means for me is I'm treading lightly. I'm taking my baby steps. I'm not just going to be like, hey, because she looks like the woman I like, or because I think this opportunity might bring me millions of dollars, or because I think that this is going to bring me some power and prestige, doesn't mean that I jump in immediately with both feet. I need to make sure that I'm covering my bases. I'm making sure that, I'm looking at all of the components, and hey, as folks say, it's the chess game. What's this move brings to this move, and that move makes that move happen. And I'm looking at that strategically. So in my relationships, regardless of what they are, how do I minimize any possible collateral damage? And then how do I avoid or navigate through some of those, minefields, as someone said to me, the minefields of relationships. Like, some things you see, there's flags all over the place. And we sometimes try to avoid the flag because we're like, no, but I want to get over there. And not realizing that there's like 1,000 flags in front of you. And you're like, but that's where I want to be on the end. And it's like, yeah, you could get there if you go around, or if you, talk about each flag so you know where they are, and meet with the person who put the flags down there.
Right. So that's real good. That actually goes into my next question with regards to really helping people to see, how do we see past the exterior into the interior of a person?
Really?
It's time to take the cover off. We're going to dig deep. We have for the feet. This is what we do.
Yeah. I mean, there's no textbooks to that one. I mean, honestly, there's just no real answer that I can say like, hey, yep, there it is, and put the pin in it. Because we're talking about human behavior, right? And with human behavior, yours is different than mine because it's based off of your environment, your upbringing, your learned behavior. And so the only thing that really gets you an opportunity to get beyond the surface is time. Spending time, investing in the time to get to know the person, not just, hey, let's get together and go have dinner. That's great. But let's sit and talk. Let's figure out what you like, what you don't like. Let's talk about, and I mean, I'm not just talking about in a man-female relationship. I'm talking about corporately. I'm talking about, with your children, whatever it is, you have to invest some energy and time into figuring out what makes that entity tick.
Right.
What is it? What do you like? What do you don't like? What works for you? What do I do that you don't care for? You know,
Right.
what do I do that makes you just look at me like I wish you'd leave me alone? Like asking
Mm.
those hard questions and being, as you say, pulling the cover off. Like, yo, listen, understand. Hey, my my credit score is at 650. I hope that's okay. or, or
Or
whatever.
five. We barely reaching five. You know,
Right.
it's usually the corner of the five, right?
But being honest about that, because those are the things that can down the road hinder the growth of a relationship,
Right.
or can bring it to a screeching halt. Because you can
Right.
say to somebody today, like, here I go. I'm always willing to put myself on the table, so
It's
it
about.
works for me. So when I deal with relationships, or I've been in my brokenness area, I've had relationships where I wasn't forthcoming. I didn't put all of it on the table. I didn't share the details. And then later on, as the person gets to know you, things start coming to the surface and they're like, you never shared that with me. Or why didn't you share that with me? And so now you're stuck because you're in this place where it's like, well, I didn't know how you would take it. Or I was trying to give you the best of me up front so you didn't see all the other ugly stuff. And they're like, well, no, I needed that ugly stuff.
The ugly stuff, for
Right.
real.
Because I needed to be, because I might not have been in this relationship with your butt this long.
Keep it 100. I need to know, for real, for real.
For real. And so, even though it's scary, and I mean, I know in relationships, we're all wired to want to be accepted. You know what I mean? Every individual, regardless of where you are, what your walk is, you want to belong to something.
Right.
And so in relationships, you're coming to a relationship with the feeling of, I want to belong to this person. I want to connect to this person. How do we mesh? And so you do what typically we all do. We show you the best of us so that you like what you see. And then later on, you be like, oh, shoot, why you leave your underwear on the floor?
Why? You wet in the morning? Like,
what?
Right.
So,
you don't know how to spend your money? You like the
your finances are what you
spend your money and mine too, and think that yeah, that's how that works.
Yeah, that's how that works.
Go
ahead. No, you.
I just with all of that, with what you just said, although there isn't like one set answer, there is something that I believe that we really need to work on, and what I found to be true for myself, right? When I talked about, what was it that I kind of failed to do in my whole entire relationship process. And really what that was learning about myself and getting it secure in my own identity. And so once I began to do that, I knew that I was who I was, and no one could sway me to break my moral rules, right? Or my standards, because then my identity wasn't wrapped up in a particular relationship and how someone viewed me. So trying to hold back I got to present my best self to you, otherwise you might not want to be with me, really talks about your own inner insecurities and your misunderstanding of who it is that you are and what you bring to the table, right? You don't see the value in yourself. And so I believe that once we work on ourselves and we get to know us, we be in intimate relationship with our own selves, we will begin to learn how to be in relationship with others.
Absolutely. And that's a time moment, right? Because we have to learn to spend some time with ourselves in order to understand who am I? What do I like? What don't I like? And what do I want to allow into my inner circle? And that takes time to figure out and process. And, it's one of the reasons why when we talked on the last podcast, it was about, folks coming into relationships, bringing this baggage that you haven't exposed or, haven't exposed to folks. And they're looking at you like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
What's all that you got with you? Well, but if you know yourself, you're able to come to the table and talk about here's who you're dealing with. Like, understand that this is me, all of me. Here it is. And if you say great, then let's work. If you say to me, that's more than I want, I'm saying great. I appreciate you telling me that so I can now not move into that direction or expend unnecessary energy, time, hurt, pain, and more struggle.
So let's move beyond that. So I'm going to continue on that moral and value piece because I think that that's really important, right?
Right.
How important are values and morals in a relationship, Ned? What would you say about that?
Wow. Well, I think that, I think that they're extremely important. Old folks would always say to us, you don't connect to anybody who's not evenly yoked with you, right?
Right. Right.
And so
Right.
that's encumbered in that. So evenly yoked isn't just this cliche statement. It's about finding someone who has a very similar or identical moral compass to you. Which is, as a disclaimer, I always say this, I think our moral compass in this country is slowly deteriorating, but that's a whole nother dialogue. But finding someone who has the same kind of similar moral base to you.
Right.
Do you worship the same God?
Right.
That's important, because those values that we attribute to our life and our lifestyles sometimes are based off of our belief system.
Right. I'll extend that just really quickly.
Yeah, please.
It's how about asking God to reveal to you the heart of the person, right? So I think about when we talk about the Holy Spirit bringing to remembrance things we once seen and have known. But the caveat there is you gotta have your own relationship.
Gotta
right?
have your own.
You gotta have a relationship with it.
You can't have that. You can't have that dialogue without the relationship.
And so I just wanted to add that in there, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. That is so important. But it is. But that moral compass or the fiber of that moral compass is something that we should be able to lean on or hold on to. I can't even begin to count the number of relationships I've been in that I've accepted someone into my inner circle, knowing that our moral belief systems were off tilt. But I was just like, hey, she's attractive. Or she has some similarities. She likes some of the things I like, but morally, she's somewhere completely different than I am. Her family value system might be different than mine. Her parenting style might be completely different than mine. Her faith might be completely
fine.
Fine, though.
He extra.
Listen, she got a body on her. I'm like, what's up? But that's not enough when you think about the longevity of relationships. And I mean, it might be okay when you're 17, 18 years old to be like, hey, she cute. That's all I need at that age.
Right.
When you get older and you're talking about established relationships and you're talking about having relationships that have purpose for you, there's got to be more to that.
That's good. So I want to expound on this piece a little bit by asking a question, because what I found in those types of relationships, I essentially hid, right? And I didn't want to hear from other people about what it was they had to say about what I was doing. And so and I've seen it from other people in instances where they're like, listen, I don't want to be judged and I don't care what nobody think. I'm going to do what I want to do because
you're growing.
Hoping and praying and wishing that things are going to kind of work out for the better. Right. And then I realized that the person was not going to change. Right. So I want to think about and kind of talk about, like, why do we hide from the wisdom and opinions, essentially the accountability system when it comes to interacting with people who may not evenly be yoked with us, as you said?
Yeah. So you kind of alluded to it already. I mean, you answered the question. We hide because we already know, like, we're hoping that this works. And so when we're immediately in a place where we're like, ooh, I hope this work out, because he or she, you already know in your spirit that discernment that we all have, that instinct, whatever terminology you want to attach to it, we have that innate ability to be like, this, all right, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try.
Yeah.
And so we tend to say to ourselves, and I think all of us are guilty of it. I don't care, male or female. I don't want nobody to know I'm dating this person until
we ain't gonna face no pit.
We ain't putting no pictures up.
We gonna wait till it's official.
We go date, but we go date out of town. Like, we go places where don't nobody know us to go. Because you're just really like, I don't know. And this person is nice, but I don't really. So we tend to hide it because we haven't done our due diligence. Because if it's right, why hide?
Yeah.
If it's lined up right, then you shouldn't have to. And it's it's easier to say that, right? And I say it because I'm still guilty of it.
Right.
But because and it's yeah.
Come on, brother Ned.
Yeah.
Put
So
it down.
well,
Somebody take
here's
the
the reality of it for most of us, and this is just being honest, right? As you said, the cover's off. It's easy to say that in the scope of doing the perfect alignment, right? But there are some variables sometimes that causes that to happen for us that we have to hide. And I don't mean it in a bad way, like, well, I don't want nobody. This is a DL relationship. We're just quiet. I don't want nobody. But when you have, like, for example, for me, I'm a dad, right? And so as a parent,
I see your shirt. Just shout out to the chest dad.
Well, that's my heavenly dad. Yeah. I'm trusting him.
Yeah.
But I'm also saying to folks, like, hey, listen, when you're a dad or mom, the relationships we get into impact our children.
Right.
Sometimes without, they're like, listen, I ain't even have any say so in this, and you brought this crazy person into our house. Now we can't get rid of them.
Yes.
So when we're finding ourselves connecting to folks, and this again in just your relationships, male, female, but even in your business relationships or in just colleagues that you may find as friends, you have to make sure, like, wait a minute, is this person going to be a decent person or a person whose moral compass matches mine? So they're not walking in my house, where I don't curse, but they come in the door cursing all the time.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So I got to be careful. And so you have to create some space or some real boundaries to say, okay, you're connected to me, but you're in my outer circle. You haven't been in the inner circle yet.
Right.
And so that does play a big part, or is a big part of that process of the hiding, I guess, as we're calling it. But it is important to know that, if you're connecting to someone before they even get to your circle, inner or outer circle, you should do your due diligence to be like, is this really going to work? And you don't know those answers up front, but you do have the ability to ask the right questions to get some answers. And don't get me wrong, some folks are going to deceive you, and some folks might lead you astray. There's some folks out there that talk a good talk, and you be like, but she said everything right.
Sweet lips, they finessers, okay?
Right?
Let's just be real.
But,
yeah. I think for me, one of the things that I really, even with what you said about that small hiding piece, I think that there still should be a point of contact where you have somewhere in your space a person whom you can trusting dad, right? That can help guide you in conversation, right? It's not about telling you what to do and casting judgment. And I think oftentimes we have a misunderstanding about insight versus judgment. And I know for me, I would answer the question about the hiding piece more so with regards to, I think that a lot of people oftentimes want to keep control and they don't want to be seen as making a mistake. So we kind of hide and guard ourselves, hoping and wishing the thing would work out for our own personal ego reasons, right? Because we don't want to be rejected, number one, on the other end, but we also don't want to seem as if we messed up again and we don't, we can't get it right? We don't want to be a disappointment. So what I've learned is that when we actually tell, we open up opportunities for insight that might be hard to essentially accept, right? The reality of it, right? But it's insights that we really need to hear in order for us to make the sound choices to get us to the next point in life where we're supposed to be. And if we're supposed to have failures all the way through our journey, right? Because
they're learning experiences.
Right. Those are the things that equip us with the next things that we need to get to where we need to be. And so I think sometimes we need to pivot our thinking about the judgment and see it more so as an insight and as wisdom bearing than casting of judgment. And that's just me. And I also saw it in some relationships that I've been in for a long time where it was like, listen, I'm tired, right? And I don't want to, like, I can't do it no more. And so I gotta figure it out,
Right. Right.
And that's essentially what I realized. Right.
Yeah.
Um, With that being said, as we kind of move forward, I want to remind everyone, thank you for joining us today. Please feel free to drop any comments or questions down below. If you have any, we want you to have conversation, being in communication with us. We want to hear from you. And also do not forget to please go over to Royalty Mission Network. We want to be able to connect with you. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out. Again, like and share. We want other people to hear and be involved in the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell us the difference more so, Ned, about the difference between toxic and broken per se. Is there a difference?
Absolutely.
Tell us about it.
There's a huge difference. So to me, a toxic, and this is, again, let me put this disclaimer on the table again. We are not therapists. This is the world of Ned being put on display. Right. Having had some toxic relationships, having had some broken relationships, and have been broken myself. But yeah, so the toxic relationship to me is the relationship that it's kind of a leech, or it's a draining relationship. It is a relationship that has attached itself to you, and it is more of a taking and less of a giving relationship. It's not symbiotic. What's that?
No, I can't live without you.
I can't live without you. Right. The relationships where someone says to you crazy stuff like, "I'll kill you before I let you go." That's a toxic relationship.
You're my drug. I've heard that too. Okay.
Yeah. So those kind of relationships are relationships that to me are toxic. They are not beneficial to you in any way, shape, or form. And again, my wonderful disclaimer is run. You really need to not connect yourself to anybody who is really feeling or treating you in that manner. So those are toxic. They bring forth very abusive behavior, whether it be mental, spiritual, or physical. Those relationships are toxic to me. Broken relationships.
Oftentimes women think that that's love, Ned. And so
therein lies the toxicity of it. It's like
he insists on me, like he loves me.
Right. When you're willing to justify that kind of behavior, you're in a toxic relationship. You are. There's no explanation for anybody to be abusive in a relationship in any form or fashion. And if you're in that type of relationship, then you need to really look at, getting out of it or figuring out how to get out of it, because it's not going to turn out well. And it's a relationship that is destined to give you nothing but heartache and hardship.
Can we clarify really quickly?
Yes.
Because we often hear people saying abuse as if it is something that is a physical manifestation or it's harsh in nature. That abuse can manifest itself in many different ways, right? It can look coddly and kind, but I just want to, if you have any insights that you want to add to that abuse piece from the male perspective or whatever perspective.
Yeah. I think it's generic across the board. An abusive relationship is any relationship that is controlling, that has you feeling like, for example, and not that this has happened to me. No. It probably has. We'll let that go. No, but if you're in relationships where you have an individual, your significant other, who's like clocking your whereabouts. Hey, why is it taking you longer than 10 minutes to get from the store? Well, because there was traffic. Like if that's an abuse, a form of abusive relationship. If the person is immediately like prohibiting you or putting roadblocks in the way of you being connected to friends or family, where they're just trying to keep you to themselves because they love you so much and nobody loves you like I do. So why do you need them in your life? You don't need any best friends. I'm your best friend. I'm your only friend. Like,
right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's be careful.
Right.
And then obviously, you have the spiritual, where folks are just trying to block you from growth. If they are looking at you and you have these dreams and admirations of doing some fantastic things that you yourself know or you were created to do, and they're looking at you and saying, I don't know why you keep trying to do that. You know that ain't going to work, or why are you doing this, and why you that is a block. That's a bad relationship. That is a toxic relationship.
Or every time you go to do it, they interfere or interject, and something got to be refocused on them. Right.
They immediately, there's a crisis on their end that stops you from being able to do what they, what you want to do. Like, oh God, I got to go do this wonderful, interview to talk about healing lives. And then all of a sudden they call you and be like, what is wrong with you? Why do you aren't here for me? And you're like, what in the world? All right, hold on. Give me a couple of minutes. I'll be right there.
All about you. Yes.
Draining you to no end. Those are those toxic relationships. And those are some of the examples of what can be considered toxic and abusive in many levels. A broken relationship to me is a relationship that has an individual, male or female, that has had a traumatic situation happen, that has dealt with some hardships that are mendable and fixable. Meaning that person is at the table saying, listen, this is me. This happened to me. I was abused as a child, or, but I want to get better. I'm looking for the help. I need that support, because those are folks who you can grow with, you can build with, you can develop with, if they're sincere. But
I was going to say, I've seen some manipulative something. I've had some who just be like, I don't know what's wrong with me, and I know what I need to do. And he using it all along.
And he saw nurturing across your forehead.
I'm like, I must got naive all up here.
No, just he looked at you and she was like, yup, she got mommy issues. She gonna be a mommy for me. She gonna take care of me. But
it is what it is.
But when a person is very real about what they're doing, and the way you gauge that is by, how far or how much are they invested? Because if you're more invested in their healing than they are, then they're not serious.
Absolutely.
But if that person shows you that they're invested in their healing, their growth, their development, then that's a person who's broken, but looking to be fixed and mended, and looking to be supported. And that relationship is not toxic. It's difficult, but all relationships are.
Right.
It takes work, but all relationships take work.
Right.
But the beauty of it is that you have two individuals who are saying, here's the common focus. Let's work on that.
Right.
And that's important.
And that's something that I didn't recognize the difference of when I was married, right? That I was thinking, oh, this is a toxic relationship because he essentially, sometimes his actions didn't align with his words. And then also there were times where there might have been promises that didn't get followed through on, but it didn't necessarily mean that it was toxic.
Right.
Men are men, right? I learned men are men.
Men are men.
Yes. So
that is such a broad stroke.
Even meant not to follow through. This is how crazy it'd be. It'd be like, oh, man, I don't even know. I meant to do that. And y'all serious about it, that you really meant to do it, but you just forgot because your minds are everywhere. No, so I do recognize.
Here's the crazy part to that, right? And I think, and normally I don't go back or contradict what you say. I think it's just the opposite for men, right?
Really?
So I remember years ago, I was listening to a sermon from a pastor. I don't remember who it was, but he did this whole conversation about the difference between men and women in their thinking. Right. And so his sermon talked about how women are like spaghetti, like you're intertwined, the sauce is in between everything. One thing connects to the next, and men are like waffles. We're departmental. So we don't multitask well. We do one thing, and then we move to the next thing, and then we can't move on until I've got this done. Listen, you asked me to put the garbage out, but I can't put the garbage out because you asked me to paint first. So I can't move on to that until I do this.
But that's not what we meant. We meant for you to take the garbage out and then get ready to paint.
Now. And what's so crazy is, right, because you were thinking the garbage got to go out because it stink and it's smelling up the kitchen and I can't cook with that smell in here. So I need to have that done now. And we're like, we're going to get to the garbage. But you want it now. And we're like, we can't do it because if I put this paint down, it's going to dry. And then I got to clean this brush out again. And I want to just finish this and then I'll get to that. Yeah. So we vary in our thought process. So it's not like so I say all that to say it's not intentional when men don't come through in the way that you want us to. Right. Sometimes we just don't react as quickly as you'd like us to.
Right. I get it. Now, I'm gonna add a different layer of intricacy to this conversation,
Okay.
because we talked about brokenness, and you made the statement that it's the relationship with a broken person is hard, but it's mendable. What is it that a healed relationship looks like, or
Mm.
a whole relationship, if it exists? I'm just throwing it
Wow.
out because my
I
beliefs
was
are
about to
different
say,
than
listen,
others.
I was about to say, I don't know what a whole relationship looked like yet.
Right.
I'm seeking that.
Right. My belief might be a little bit different from some of our church folk, but it's all good. But
But I will say that a mended relationship is a relationship that has open and honest communication. It is a relationship that um, operates out of a place of serving, meaning that you are looking to benefit your mate more than you are yourself sometimes. I know there are a lot of folks who will push back on that, but I think that when two people both have that mindset, great things happen for them. When when one person has a spirit of serving and the other has a spirit of receiving, it ain't happening. But but when both of them are thinking, hey, because you got to imagine, let's think about that. If you and your mate are both in the mindset where, hey, I'm about to get off work. I know that my wife likes flowers. I'm going to stop by and get her some flowers. And the wife is at work thinking, I'm about to get off work. And I know my man liked them burgers from Five Guys. I'm going to swing by and pick him up a burger. Both of y'all going to be very happy when y'all get home.
yes, yes,
That's
yes.
that servitude spirit of like, hey, I'm looking out for them. I want to make sure that I'm making sure that I put a smile on their face today. Whatever I got to do, however I got to do it, I want to make them happy.
Yeah.
And if that happens in a relationship, that to me is a very healed or working or almost holistic, I guess, if I could, whole relationship. If people are operating in that place where they're like, hey, what matters to me is making sure that that person is happy or fulfilled in some way. Because I can't give you, complete joy, because that's just not within the capacities of our flesh. But I can find fulfilling moments for you. And if I take the time to get to know you and understand some of the things that you enjoy or like, then I can do that. And you know what I mean? And it doesn't take a lot of effort sometimes. It just takes some attentive behavior.
Yeah, that's good. I really like that.
Yeah.
I kind of want to ask a question with regards to how can I say it?
You
I'm
make me
trying to
nervous when you
think.
start off like that.
So, because you've given us this distinct difference between toxic relationships, broken relationships, and a relationship that it has been mended.
Okay.
I caught that it's not
Yeah.
essentially healed or wholeness, but it's been mended. Um, I find that there are times when people they're seeking healing from the very thing that broke them or aided in their brokenness in the first place. And so what's the danger in this behavior, and what should we be doing? Like help us help us.
Oh, really? Wow. How to help us when we are seeking healing in the areas that have caused us most pain, huh? Well, let's go here. So the first thought that's bouncing around in my head that's screaming to get out is insanity, right? It's like, let's not operate in a place of insanity, right? You're never going to get a different result if you keep going to the same source.
Right.
And so to keep looking for that is not, it's just not, it lacks wisdom.
Right.
And I think that's, I laugh. My mom has this phrase that she always says, that common sense isn't common.
Right.
Like everybody ain't got common sense. And so you think like, wow, so everybody doesn't operate in wisdom either, in the same vein of thinking. And so there's times when we know what's not good for us, but we still do it, even though we know. We have a clear understanding of what happened beforehand and why we walked away from it, or why we didn't like it, or why it hurt us. And then we find ourselves gravitating back to it because it's sometimes familiar, because sometimes it's comfortable. Even if it hurts, it's comfortable. I I used to teach a life skills class years ago. And I used to, at the end of every course, I would always talk about this old dog. I would tell the story about the old dog. And so the story goes briefly. There's this man who lives on his house in the middle of nowhere. And he has this big hound dog that sleeps on the front porch every day. And so the mail carrier would come to the house every day and deliver the mail. And he'd say to the old man, "Why does your dog always moan and groan all day? Like every time I come here, the dog is just laying there and he's moaning and groaning." And every day the man would look at the mail carrier and just be like, "Well, because he's tired, I guess." And then this went on for a period of days. And then eventually the old man was like, "I found out why the dog is moaning all the time." And the mail carrier said, "Well, why? What happened? What's going on? Is he sick?" He was like, "Well, no, he's laying on the nail." And the old man, he was like, "What?" He was like, "Why don't you just get up?" He was like, "Well, the nail's not hurting him enough." He'll lay there and complain and moan about it, but it's not hurting him enough to make him get up and move off of the nail. And a lot of times we're in relationships that hurt, but they just ain't hurting us enough to make us move away from them completely. And so we find ourselves gravitating back to that because even the hurt can become familiar,
Right.
And so we put ourselves in position to just be hurt because, hey, I'd rather deal with the old cliche. I'd rather deal with the devil I know than the devil I don't. Well, sometimes it ain't the devil out there. It's actually a blessing waiting for you somewhere if you just get off of that nail.
When you said that, it brought to my mind when people say, what is it? Why are women attracted to the dysfunctional man? And
I don't say that. I've never said that. I don't know where you would even get that from.
I hear it all the time. I see it all the time. I see it
I've said
all the time. Right?
I've said it a number of times myself, so I got you.
I know. I crack up. But I believe that it's exactly what you said. But to another extent, it's almost like you're so broken. Your mind might be so warped that your functional is dysfunctional, right? Like I think of the functional drug addict. You're operating out of dysfunction, but you're operating so you feel like you operating. Right, but you're never at your full capacity because you don't even know that. You don't
even realize that you're not there. You're like, I'm good. Yeah, like, dude, you are not good. Trust me.
So as we wrap up this conversation about broken, toxic, and mended relationships, right? What would be the summation of what you would love the hearers to walk away from? And an action step that you would suggest for individuals to take as they are on their journey toward their healing and seeking to be in relationship of any kind.
Right. Wow. So I guess the first real takeaway, there's a couple that I'll have for tonight. One is there is no dumb question, right? We've heard that in school, most of our lives. There are no dumb questions. Ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask the tough question. Right. The next one for me would be, and I mentioned it earlier, is operating in this place of cautious optimism. It's an exciting thing to be in a new relationship. It's exciting to connect to someone and learn and grow, but do it cautiously. Do it in a way that allows you to take the steps at a pace that works for you. Don't be pressured. Don't be pushed into a relationship. Don't be baited into a relationship. Cautiously go into it so that you are doing it under your terms. Because at the end of the day, if you walk or rush, you're going to stumble and fall. So take your time.
Yeah.
The last thing would be, which chimes in all three, just be very communicative. Talk. Take the time, invest the time in getting to know the person. This isn't, again, not some therapeutic remedy, but it is an honest life assessment that, listen, if you take the time to get to know the person before you are physically connected to that person, before you are emotionally embedded into their world, things you can work through some stuff, because the worst thing you want to do is, and again, I'm just, as we have the cover pulled off, find yourself in a relationship with somebody that you physically have now become connected to them, and then that becomes something that you are like, okay, they ain't all that
Let's
blood.
be real. Put it out there where you make babies with them, and then all of a sudden it's like, this really wasn't it.
Or you just even if because the childbirth, absolutely, it becomes a big piece. You're like, wait a minute, now I'm connected to this person, for the next 21 years, whether I like them or not. And
forever, Ned, forever,
forever. So you're connected to a person that you really didn't get to know, or you really don't care for. But the other part of that is, you don't really want to be in a position, because the first thing that happens, and a lot of people don't understand this, and there is a emotional attachment the minute that you have sex with somebody.
Yeah. And
you can say to me 10 times to Sunday that I don't really like them, it's just sex. Well, if you called them back, it's more than just sex. If y'all
we have another episode on that one, sex and healing. We're gonna talk about that.
We're gonna go there. All the way there. Yeah, we're gonna go there. That's gonna be at the kitchen table, because they're gonna really need to sit down and eat this one. But when you physically attach yourself, have sex with somebody, there's an emotional connection, because there is a sharing of bodies at that point in time. You can't deny that person is like, whether you say, it was I, or it was, oh my God, I'm calling her there is some emotional baggage that comes along with that, from one or the other, or both.
Right.
And so before you get there, where that clouds your ability to have real conversation, it clouds your ability to really talk to each other about the hard conversations and questions. Talk first, intimacy later.
Yeah.
Those are my takeaways.
That's good. One step that you have for them going forward?
Cautious optimism. That's all. Listen, be careful. Be careful, because, and I know that sounds really, it's becoming a cliche, but you matter. You have to believe that. Like, you have to believe that you matter. And so if your self-worth is at 10, don't accept 3. Don't accept 5. If your self-worth is at 10 and someone comes with 8, but they're willing to work to get to the other 2 in, then that's okay. We can work with that, because we're close to each other. That means our moral compasses are in the same ballpark. We're in the same field. But if you're at 10 and this person's at a 2, you know that y'all not at the same place. Y'all not thinking the same. You're not living the same. You're not operating in the same vein of thinking. And so don't do that to yourself, and vice versa. If you had a 2 and you trying to go after the 10, you might need to do some work. Let's be real. But you got to work on you. Be like, listen, I want the 10. Great. Keep that as the goal, but that means you got to work your way up, because you can't be a 2 and think that you're going to attach to a 10, because real talk, if they accept you, they're not going to value you.
Yes. Good. That's what we're gonna hold on to that one for our next conversation.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm gonna say work on you. That's the biggest thing. As I go on this healing journey, it's working on me. And I hope that each and every one of you participate in this healing journey for yourself. It's not about anyone else, it's about you. It's about where you want to go. And so Royalty Mission Network wants to thank you for joining us this evening for Barbershop Conversations in the Throne Room. Please feel free to leave your comments, like, and share it for others to view at a later date and time. Visit us on the web at royaltynetwork.net. You can also find us on Facebook. We got TikTok, Instagram, all of that stuff. I don't know. It's all out there. But we are excited to want to be able to connect with you, and that you would want to connect with us. If you are in need of anything, please feel free to reach out as far as someone to be able to talk to. We did leave information in the chat line. If you are having any difficulties or are really experiencing some type of suicidal thoughts or anything, please reach out to someone. You are not alone. We are doing this together.
Absolutely.
And so we want to extend that to you. But again, thank you, Brother Ned. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks right here in the Throne Room for Barbershop Conversations. Have a great night, guys.